future of the relationship between Turkey and the regime look like? Hello and welcome to Dimensions Center interviews. It has been over a year since the Turkish government expressed its intention to normalize relations with Assad regime. However, till now, no advance has been achieved. This coincides also with a relative slowdown in other Arab states' efforts to normalize relations with Assad regime. Of course, we understand the Turkish strategy for normalization, the relationship with Assad regime. It aligns with its broader approach of improving relations with countries like Saudi Arabia, like UAE, like Egypt. However, given the recent elections and Turkish internal dynamics, as well as, of course, external dynamics, I mean the relationship with Russia, with Iran, who are the main actors on the ground in Syria also, all of that raise questions about the Turkish government next steps regarding the normalization with us. Today, to discuss this important topic, we do have with us Dr. Raqib Oğglo. He's a Turkish researcher. Dr. Raqib Oğglo has a PhD from Sakarya University, Middle East Institute. He is a frequent guest on global media like Al Jazeera, Russia Today, China Daily, and TRT. And he has authored various book chapters and research articles on Turkish foreign policy and Gulf affairs. Thank you so much, Dr. Mehmet, for joining us. And I'd like actually directly to start asking you if can you provide us an overview about the current situation of the normalization process between Turkey and...
Thank you, first of all, Ustaz Muhammad, and I thank the Dimensions for Strategic Studies. I hope these series of interviews will help all of us to understand the current developments in the Middle East. First of all, to answer your question, I think analyzing the historical parts of the bilateral relations is critical. Without having a kind of details about Turkey and Syria relations, we can't understand the normalization process. I'll just give some points and I'll just highlight some important points. Till 2011, both countries were dedicated to upgrade and improve their relations. It was well known. But when the protests started in the region, Turkey supported democracy and the waves of change in each countries. At that time, it was rational for Turkey since the conjunctures or circumstances in the region were favorable. But Turkey tried to pursue the regime to change, to make some reforms in terms of political society. At first, Turkey did not want to change radically the regime, but then the regime did not accept the political reforms. So the regime increased the pressure and killed innocent people. And then Turkey tried to lead the transformation process in Syria. Since then, Turkey has been supporting the opposition and democratization process. Until 2020, like 3 years ago, there was not much effort in terms of normalization with Syria. Not just in terms of regards to Turkey, but also at the level of regional dynamics. So the normalization process with Assad regime started a few years ago through intelligence service. I think it's also important because when the intelligence service take the role, then the political actors enter the process, and it was happened in Turkey, Syria normalization, and in terms of normalization with Syria and Assad regime, we don't just speak about Syria and Turkey. We also speak about Iran and Russia because these are actors have been active in the region. And since this normalization process has started, we see that lots of joint mechanism and meetings were implemented. So both foreign and defense minister and head of intelligence met several times in different countries. But what we see is that no concrete conclusion have appeared yet. So it is also important part. And lastly, to understand correctly this process, we must also bear in mind that this is a process that Turkey has launched and showed its intention to normalize with all countries in the region. It is not special for Syria. Turkey has been trying to normalize its relations with Egypt, with Israel, United Arab Emirates, Syria, and these are the other examples. Therefore, there is no need to focus just on Syria. Syria, normalization with Syria is a kind of strategy that Turkey aims to be friend with all, because it's like a obligatory for all countries in the region to have at least managing the rivalry. I call it. It's not a marhala. It's not a process that you have full cooperation, but you have to cooperate. You have to manage the rivalry with regional actors.
Okay, Dr. Mehmet, you mentioned, I think, an important point, and we can highlight that, of course, we have seen a kind of maybe returning to the old policy of Turkey, which is zero problems with the Middle East countries or even in the world. But the question here that we can really ask, okay, Turkey tried to improve relationship, for example, with Saudi Arabia. There is a big mutual interests. However, this is the issue here with Assad regime. We think, maybe we all know, that the two fundamental issues between Turkey and Assad regime, what Turkey needs from Assad regime, I think two fundamental issues: coordinating, countering terrorism, I mean against PKK, BYD, SDF, etc. And the other issue is also coordinating regarding returning back the Syrian refugee from Turkey. However, as much as we have seen, there is no readiness from the Assad regime to collaborate. So why still the strategy is to normalize this relationship with Assad regime, since in the meanwhile the Assad regime does not respond to giving Turkey what they want.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, it's an important question, because since some Arab countries normalized their relations with Assad, we haven't seen that Assad regime is eager to cooperate, to collaborate, or to engage in terms of fighting against terrorism, or having a cooperation in terms of returning of Syrian refugees to the Syria and other.
The drug issue also for
Arab so it's obvious that Syria, actually the regime is not eager. But when we think about the Turkey and Turkey's policy, we see that Turkey openly initiated a new normalization process with the regime without stopping support to the opposition. I mean, Turkey does not change its priorities in Syria. However, the regime is not eager, since it's not much more powerful than in the past, and it is widely known that there is no agreement. So the regime flips the ball or throw the ball into the ground. As a matter of fact, Turkey continues its military presence within the scope of fight against terrorism, and Assad's demands for the Turkish soldiers to check was never accepted. I mean, Assad has been requesting from Turkey to withdraw the troops, and Turkey never accepts, because if the fights against terrorism and the regime accept the collaboration in terms of fight against terrorism, and if a regime accepts to collaborate in terms of refugees, then Turkey, the process can be accelerated. So in that regard, we have to also bear in mind that the process in Syrian civil war and international or regional actors' position in Syria also affect the process in normalization process with Turkey. On the other hand, what we see is that the normalization in terms of, I mean, Arab normalization with Assad regime empowers and provides a kind of legitimacy to regime. You know, most of the Arab countries, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and now the Syria is back on Arab League. So Syria thinks that it's much more powerful than the past. On the other hand, we see Russia and China, and Russia's power is diminishing since Moscow deals with Ukraine, and on the other hand, China's economic power is increasing. Therefore, the regime is not the same in 2020 when the normalization process started. Regarding the negotiation, the regime is more powerful in the past. And lastly, Iran is quite bothered from the normalization process between Turkey and Syria, as you all know, and lots of the reports has been revealed and published in our center in Jusur and Abad. We see that Turkey, because Turkey helped Azerbaijan in the latest war, and that upset Tehran. So Turkey, I think, at least three options. The first one, it will pursue the regime to fight against PYD from north of Syria, Turkey, from south of Syria. The regime could launch a kind of military operation against PYD, since both sides are agreed that PYD is a terrorist organization and regime accepts it. So it could be this scenario. In that scenario, they can revive the Adana Agreement that was signed in 1998. But this scenario is not, I think it can't happen. It can't happen in near future because the regime is not eager and is not capable of doing so. Because the regime has not a powerful army, and it is almost mission impossible. The second one, Turkey can cooperate with, Turkey can pursue the regime through coordination with Russia and Iran. And the regime must accept a directive or order from Moscow, because now the regime is totally dependent on Russia. But this normalization may accelerate if Iran and Moscow does not pressure the regime. Lastly, Turkey can use the US and Arab countries to pressure the regime regarding normalization. But I don't think that any countries will help Turkey, because once Turkey normalizes the relations with Syria, Turkey will not, deal with the terrorists, deal with the threats from Syria. So that will empower and strengthen Turkey, that the other countries, they don't want it.
Thank you, Doctor. You mentioned just about the, Arabic normalization so with Assad regime, but maybe we should highlight here, we have seen a kind of relative slowdown of the Arabic normalization with Assad regime, because also the same, the Assad regime is not collaborating, is not responding to the Arabic interests regarding drug countering, regarding also refugees, the other issues. And we have seen, maybe, I think you are also monitoring the situation in Syria. We have seen maybe demonstrations and protests in Wahda.
Yes.
We are seeing very big, maybe, protests against SDF forces in Deir ez-Zor, also near Manbij. So my question maybe here, how does Turkey perceive those recent protests or developments, dynamics, let's say, especially in Wahda? And I think maybe here, as I said, the demonstrations in Wahda is also related somehow to the slowdown or the cold position of the Arabic normalization or Arabic position regarding the Assad. So what we can talk about the Turkish position or vision here?
Yeah, actually, as you know, as you also follow the situation, Wahda is a city full of Durzis, and these Durzis protest the regime in the square of Karama for at least two reasons. The first one is about deterioration of economic situation, and there is high hike in fuel prices and corruptions. And the second one is forced requirement of young people these are the two reasons that led a revolt or demonstration in Sweden by Durzis. But the regime, when I compare the first wave or first part of demonstration in Syria in 2011 and 2012, the regime does not intervene strongly because it doesn't want to draw backlash from the international community. Now, the regime is accepted in the Arab League, and there are lots of countries that are embracing regime, and the regime doesn't want to be known as a full authority that kills their people. So they don't want to make this,
especially the minorities.
Yes, especially minorities, because the regime is known as the a defender of minorities. So it is important to understand that the regime, I think the regime doesn't take strict position against this process. But Turkey is very quiet in this process because I think Ankara thinks that any reactions could harm the normalization process. So so Turkey's position is quite, Turkey doesn't take a strict stand. It's not that there is no clear stance in terms of protests in Sweden, but the demonstrations show or reveal that the revolution in Syria takes a long time, and it is still continues in a process. So therefore, although the regime was readmitted to the Arab League and many countries normalized with the regime, they accepted whatever he has done, whatever he killed lots of people. He forced them to leave their countries, even though he's guilty. This is a process, but it is always I see that the fire of revolution is still active in the Syria. But if you ask me about the future about Syria civil war, the war in Syria will not end in short term, because it's not there is no one dynamic. There are lots of dynamics, complex and interconnected. So once you solve any problem, there are lots of sub-problems into this main one. So desire and fire for revolution is still alive, and shaking hands or normalizing with the regime will not end the war. This is important. In terms of Turkey, we have been discussing with several experts, with several scholars. Okay, there is a mentality that Turkey wants to normalize, but once you normalize, it doesn't mean that Syrians will go back to their country. It doesn't help. It doesn't help to end the war. So there are lots of problems in terms of normalization and in terms of Syrian civil war. But lastly, I would like to highlight that the problem of irregular immigration cannot be solved in terms of Turkey unless the Aleppo issue is solved, because many of the Syrians in Turkey, they are from Aleppo. So once you deal with regime in terms of Aleppo, Turkey could have some kind of leverage, and then Turkey can solve the problems. The main problems. Of course, there are lots of problems that will still left.
Thank you so much for your insights. And I can add, as you said, maybe there are a lot of maybe regional, international, and local actors which make the consensus between all of them is very, very hard. And you raised actually an issue about Aleppo, Halab, and maybe we can make a new interview just about this issue, because it is really important, and maybe this is a kind of, let's say, solution. In the end of this interview, I would like to thank you so much, Dr. Mehmet Raqib Oghlo, and I hope we can meet again in future more interviews. Thank you so much.
Thank you.